Hello everybody, how are you doing? I hope you've been outside. It's been glorious weather, hasn't it? Mr. Hall and I went out to join in the World Tai Chi Day that Louise and Michelle and the two Mikes did. And for most people, it's been a fantastic time to catch up with the gardening. One thing we can do when we're gardening though is really aggravate the back. And for a lot of people, I think there's even a term gardener's back. And this is why I started this series, because I have a heart problem and it's very hard for me to do Tai Chi because any time that I lift my arms above my heart for any length of time isn't good for me. I can't do that. And so it started me thinking about all the other things that get in the way of us practicing our Tai Chi, as our bodies don't work as well as they used to do. And that's why I started the series. And we've been looking last week at back care and this week at back care, so that we can get the back to be very strong and not pick up any bad habits with posture, and so that doesn't prevent us from enjoying our Tai Chi and relaxing into our Tai Chi and meditating, reaching that kind of meditative state within Tai Chi, reaching the flowing kind of movements that we need in Tai Chi, because bits of us don't work and joints of us don't work, and so we get that kind of disjointed, clumpy, and sometimes we just can't hold the posture because of the aches or that happen. So last week we looked at the program that I'd picked up on a conference that was linking together several moves in succession, which if we practiced them 2-3 times a week, we would develop a really strong back. And I said last week, let's do it seated as well. So this week we're having a go at the same thing but seated. So we're going to start off, I said my favourite core strengthener was standing. So in seated, we're going to start off with Dandasana, just the main seated pose. It isn't the first pose that's taught of the seated poses because it's actually a very hard thing to do. So we're going to start with Dandasana. That will be our core strengthener. And then we're going to go through that program that we did last time, which is having our spinal twist as our transitional gear, putting it in the middle of the other two, which are going to be a back bend and a forward bend. And last week we did our forward bend first because forward bends calm and backward bends activate, and I had lots of things to do that I wanted to go and be active with. This week I'm going to turn it around because it's a Sunday. It's a really calm, slow day, and calming and slowing down is what I want to keep my focus on today. So we'll start with the back bend, use our twist, and then we'll finish up with our forward bend, bringing that smoothness and calmness back. So here's the first one. I'm going to turn sideways for Dandasana, seated pose. I'll go right to the other end and talk about the feet first and then come back to the back. So the feet, you can see what mine want to do. They want to shorten this way. So you can see my toes want to go that way, my heels want to go this way. So I think that's probably the backs of my legs not having enough flexibility at the moment. I've been doing a lot of gardening too. So the first thing we want to do is lengthen the legs by pushing the heels away, lengthening the legs, so lengthening the legs this way. Now you can see that in response to that, my toes want to come back towards me. Why is that? Because I've got very strong feet muscles and I use my feet a lot doing yoga, doing Tai Chi, doing things. I use my feet a lot for balance. All those muscles want to take over right now, so I've got to let them all go. So let's let them go. And then try again, pushing that way. Because what we want to do is the sole of the feet be relaxed, the instep of the feet, the sole of the feet and the insteps be relaxed, and also ascending. There's an awful lot of ascending needs to go on. So we want to go, the feet need to ascend. I hope that you can see that is straighter. So pushing away that way, feet going up this way. The other thing which you can't see from my position is that my feet are rotating with the outer sides moving away and the inner sides coming in. We want the opposite of that to make those straight. So I want to encourage the inner sides in and the outer sides out. I'm going to do it with my hands as well because I'm not sure you can see with my feet. The knees. Do you remember last week we had to pull the kneecaps up and not push them back? Not the same, but the same. Don't push back on these joints is the same. Do you remember in that? If not, have a look back at that to check, because it's very important. Knees are very, very important things. I mean, every joint's important, but knees go wrong very easily. So we're not going to pull the kneecaps up, but what we are going to do is push the kneecaps down into the knees. And in response, we're going to stretch out the skin underneath the legs. So it's a feeling that this piece here, if I drew a little square under my kneecap, is stretching. All that skin is stretching. I've got to try really hard not to lift my heels off the floor now. By keeping this stretching. Okay, what we're going to do now, the thighs are going to push down. The skin is going to come up at the back, and then the hips are going to allow them to come round this way. Last week I was saying when you sit cross-legged you develop that, but here we do want the hips to turn slightly in, or allow that. The lumbar tucks in, it doesn't push in, and there shouldn't be any pain in the lumbar. If that is happening to you and it's really hard for you right now, and your lumbar just wants, I can't make mine give way, sorry, your lumbar just wants to give way, there we go, give way, you probably need to work with some height until you've practiced this enough to come off it. And a folded blanket, this is my Indian blanket, so it's not wool, I don't know what it's made of. It's a sort of rough feeling to it, so it's not wool, so it won't give like wool would, but a blanket is fine. Maybe a bath towel would be better than a blanket. And then it's just folded up, and you can sit one of two ways. You can either sit that way with it, and you'll see my back instantly, I hope, straighten up there, and I could stay here for ages. Or if you feel it more comfortable, you can do what's called sitting off the corner. So you turn that way and sit off the corner. Okay, I'm going to take mine out. Okay. And the last thing we're going to do is put our hands beside us here. We're going to lift, like I said last week, the rib cage, the collarbone is going that way, not that way. The shoulder blades are coming down, not lifting up, but down. And then the work comes. Now we've got into the pose, the work comes in the pose. What wants to let go? This one, I want to do that. What have I got to work the hardest? I can feel that it's the lumbar. So how do I address that? Awareness sometimes leads to change. So for you, if that's enough and you realise that and you just put your blanket in, and that's fine, that's sorted. What else could I do? Well, I need to think about how I strengthen the lumbar, how I keep the back straight. We'll have to save that for another week. We've got a lot to do now. But the message I've picked up is that's the bit that doesn't work. That's the bit that I've got to pay more attention to. And I could easily just, and you can too, put a blanket in, and that's sorted. But we might go on to look at that if people are interested another week. I'm going to move on now to our back bend, which is Ustrasana. I'll try it this way. We'll see if this is the best view from side on. Okay, so we're on our knees. Remember the same really as last week's back bend. And do you remember when I made you put your fingers on the chair and your thumbs there so that you couldn't do that with your back bend, but you had to go that way? It's similar. Remember that feeling, because we hit the back bend is this bit of your back up here, not this bit here. So we don't want to bend that bit in, and we don't want to curve that bit in. This is the bit up here that we want to do, bend in the back bend. The thighs are going to come forward, and the backs of the thighs are going to come forward to there. This is going to lift up like it did last week. And now I like to put my hands this way. What am I doing? I'm turning that hand that way up. That is so that my thumbs sit in my tailbone and my fingertips come just under my thoracic back, under my ribs. I then have a measure to lift off of with my fingertips. It can be very uncomfortable to do it, so please don't. This isn't about being more uncomfortable, it's about getting less pain in your life. So if that isn't comfortable for you, then place your hands this way or whatever works for you. Hands on hips is fine. This helps me because I keep my lumbar. I feel my thumbs on my lumbar, and now I have to lift off my fingertips, lift off my fingertips, lift off my fingertips, dig into that thoracic back, everything up, dig the shoulder blades in, the thoracic back, and if it's comfortable, take the head back. So I can keep feeling the thumbs, telling me to let go of the lumbar, don't work in the lumbar, and I keep feeling my fingertips telling me to lift up and over them. Lift your head first. Take your hands carefully out of your back. If you have any pain in your lumbar, you can, just a natural pain from moving, I mean, you can now sit back onto your heels if you can and rest down. I'm going to move into our twist. Which we get into from Dandasana, the first pose. I might turn around in a minute if I don't think you can see properly. Because what I want to do is take both legs to the side. I want to put this one so that my sole is coming up and the instep is rolling forward. Can't see, can you? There we go, to the side of me. But be relaxed. Again, this is about getting pain out of our lives, not putting more in. And then take this one, and here, this part of my foot here is going to rest into that natural dip that comes there. So the one just naturally rests inside of the other one. The knees are facing forwards. And now I'm going to turn around. Okay. You can see my struggle with my hips. You can see that wants to happen badly for me. The struggle for me now is to keep my weight down on this hip. And that's due to a spinal complication that I have from childbirth. But we've all got our gremlins, so it's not at all unusual if one of your hips doesn't want to go. I was saying to you before, this is about awareness, and that's enough for some people. Okay, so that happens with that hip. Encourage your body, challenge it a little bit, but don't think that you can't do it because your hip's not going to go down. This is about your transitional twist. So you'll see that hip wants to come up. I'm going to take this hand, which is the hand furthest away from the feet, the folded feet, and I'm going to put it under my knee. Sorry, the back of my palm just below this knee. I'm going to take this hand and I'm going to put it behind my feet. Now I'm going to turn around again so you can see. Do you remember last week I was saying this is the part that needs to turn? And it's very difficult to turn if it's closing in, as I'm doing right now. Why is that? It's because of that left hip. Partly, but it's also because I'm not actually stretching upwards. And partly, that's because my arms aren't long enough to reach the floor. So, I'm going to get a brick to lift the floor up. Mr. Iyengar used to say that you can't do the work in the pose if you can't get into the pose, which is why it's unusual. In a lot of yoga, you won't see bits used. From my Mr. Iyengar, get into the pose using aids because the work comes in the pose. So, there's no right or wrong of using props. It's particular to the way that you want to practice. I'm using the blocks so that I can reach the floor because my arm isn't long enough. Now I can push, and you'll see the difference. Without it, I can't reach, and I'm sinking down and I can't get much of a turn. Now that my arm can reach the floor, I can push against that floor to look up, to come up, look, and now I can rotate into the twist. And I could, if I wanted to increase the twist, put my hand behind me to have even more twist. This isn't only the Maracayasana process, this is Bhujangasana 1. And release. I didn't say this last week, but remember to do your turns on both sides. Last week I was going around feeling very stretched out on one leg and not on the other, and I was sort of walking lopsided. So that was our twist. So what have we got left to do? Can you remember? That was the transition. We've done the back bend, so it's the forward bend that we've got left to do. We're going to start again in Dandasana. This was Mr. Iyengar's favourite forward bend. He said if you don't get time to do any other one, do this one. Janu Shashasana. Start in Dandasana. Then we're going to want to bend this knee and bring this foot up to come into our thigh. Move these slightly. We're also going to take this hip back if that helps to put it down. So I don't know. I don't know how well that's going for you, whether you can only get your leg that far, which is fine. Later on it might come up a bit further, who knows, but right, if that's as far as you can. I've been doing this for a very long time, so I just naturally do this and it goes down and everything's fine. So that's fine if that's as far as you want to, it can come in. But for me, that just goes there. So what's the aim though? The aim, if you can see, is for that foot to be that way up, for this knee to be down, for this hip to be back. So we're in half of that, is it the lotus? And now your body's going to want to do that and follow that leg, but what we want to do is come back to this leg here. So partly, having understood that rotation, the twist helps us, doesn't it? Because now we're not going to go back that way, but we're going to make sure that we come around that way. So what if we can't get that lift? Sit on your blanket. Come up higher, sit on your blanket. You're going to come forward with your hands, so there's no point putting anything here to push up against. Use your blanket, sit on your blanket. And a couple of blankets, as long as you're not going to fall off of them, get high enough, because we want to get around there. And now we're going to come straight down this leg. I'm going to use a Kung Fu sash, which Mr. Hall let me have. It's an absolutely beautiful thing. You can use a belt, a dressing gown belt, cord, a rope tends to be quite hard and harsh. So Taekwondo people have their belts. Some people might, I don't know if you'd allowed to do that with your obi. Might get into trouble doing it with your obi, but whatever you can find that's similar. I'm going to put it around the ball of the foot, right? Hopefully you can see that that is the ball of the foot. It's not my instep. It's not my toes. It's the ball of the foot. There. Because what I'm going to do is use my arm strength to encourage my body forwards. Because this is the stretch. I want to bring my body forwards. So I can use my arm strength if needs be. As I come forwards, I can widen the elbows. I can even rotate down the belt if that helps. And use my upper body arm strength to come forwards and come forwards. Okay, we're not doing this to get down. If you get to here, to come down, you want to go, can you see, I hope you can see that as I'm going backwards to try and get down there. By doing that, that's the most common thing that happens. We want to go forwards. We want to keep the lift. We want to keep the lift here. I want to keep the lift here. Do you remember in everything we've done so far, that ascension that needs to come? Keep that here. We need to keep the collarbone up and the head up. The head would be the very last thing. So if you get to here and you start to do that, then stop. That's it for you for now. There's more to come. There's plenty of time. So it's not a problem for me to go to here. I've still got my head up. I've still got my head up. I've still got my head up. I don't need this anymore. You might not need it anyway. Reach over my foot. Okay, don't let the knee come off the floor. If it's coming off the floor, take your belt back to come down, to bring the head, forehead to the shin. Why? Because if you've got something to press against, remember, that gives you help when you're working. So what else could you do? If you don't want to stay back here, you're nearly there, and you want to do that last little bit, use something big. These are yoga bolsters, but pillows, cushions. Remember, the aim is, if my head doesn't reach my shin, I want to bring my shin up, the level of my shin. So I'm putting it over my shin, just making that higher. And now I can put my head down. I've got something to press against. When I press here, now my back will stretch. I can feel the back stretching. I can relax into this pose. Pushing down with my head. That's a lot of information, isn't it? So I'm going to recap. What are the important points about a forward bend? That we want to relax into it. It's about slowing down and calming down. So that's why I've given you as much information as I have, because I want you to get as close to the foot and as down as you can so that you can relax into it. And that comes after time. If that's far enough in for you, and that's far enough for your stretch, then you're getting a good back stretch. And you stay there. And remember patience. Might be worth just saying one more time. We need something to give us a core strength. We need a back bend, a forward bend, and a transitional twist. And the aim of all of that is to strengthen our back so that when we do the Tai Chi, we aren't hampered in our movements. We aren't hampered by the pain of a bad back. Please remember, if you experience any pain, then stop. Like I was saying before, the message here for me, very strongly to you, is this is about reducing pain and enabling us to do our Tai Chi better, not adding to our pain and preventing us from moving. Thank you.